What do you wish of me? We are in camp, so 'tis as good a time as any. What do you wish of me? If you must.
Yes. I am hardly surprised. Very well. Speak, then. Then I suggest we move on. As you wish.
What do you need? Ask away. I already said I wouldn't. The answer is still no. What do you need? Ask away. Such as they are. About the great... What do you need?
Yes? Something you need? Yes? What's on your mind? Where did you hear this? And did you not think that this could be historical fact and no longer true? Not all minstrels are spies. Most are just singers and storytellers, but some of them are what we call bards. Many use the two words minstrel and bard interchangeably, but to do so in Orlais would cause misunderstanding. Bards are minstrels and more. Spies, as you say. Some say there is a bard order, but I don't think this is true. Many bards work alone or in small groups, doing the bidding of a patron who pays for their services. If there is an organization behind it all, no one knows who they are. What do you think? They infiltrate, steal, sometimes assassinate? It depends on the bard. In Orlais, there is much rivalry amongst the highborn. They fight over land, influence, and the favor of the Empress. But they cannot do this openly because it is impolite, and in public, they wear smiling faces and pretend to be civil. In secret, they plot and scheme to destroy each other. It is a game completely meaningless to anyone but its players. And I shouldn't I, after having spent most of my adult life as one? You've guessed as much, I'm sure. But does it really matter what I was? What's past is past. My skills served me well, but the day finally came when I decided to just put them aside. I found myself in Ferelden and sheltered from bad weather in the Chantry. And when the storm passed, I just did not want to leave. I like to see the Maker brought me here. Yes? Something you need? I don't think you have the correct aptitude. I could give you some pointers, though. You may be able to pass them on to someone you know. Let's just go over there, away from the others, for safety, yes? I expect there shall be daggers flying about willy-nilly for a time. Yes? Something you need? Yes? What's on your mind? Of course I do. I love stories far too much to keep them to myself. Everyone should be able to benefit from them, I think. Chantry law says it is man's pride that created the Darkspawn. In ages past, the mages of the Tevinder Imperium ruled much of the world we know. In their pride, they thought their magics invincible and imagined that they were greater than the Maker himself. So thinking, they invaded his golden city, planning to take it for themselves and depose their own creator. But they were impure and full of sin, and it is with the sin that they tainted the golden city, corrupting it forever. the Maker cursed them and cast them from his sight. Wherever they went, they spread the taint of their sin. Any land that was touched by the taint became blighted and would suffer no life. Instead, the Darkspawn arose to torment us and remind us of our hubris. A long time ago, a girl child was born to a farmer. He had hoped for a son, not a daughter, and so he told his wife to abandon the child in the woods. Before the cold could claim her, the baby was found by a tribe of Dalish elves who took pity on the poor mewling thing and raised her as their own. Aveline, for that is what they called her, grew strong and quick and clever under the guidance of the elves. She learned to wield the sword as well as any man, could kill a deer with an arrow at 100 paces, and was as graceful on the back of a horse as she was on foot. Aveline's Dalish guardians saw that she could easily best any Orlesian chevalier in battle, and wanted to show the cruel humans the child they had left to die. They bestowed upon her a fine horse and armor, and sent her to prove herself to her people in the grand tourney. Now in those days, no woman was allowed to take up arms, let alone compete in the grand tourney, but Aveline kept her helmet on and was not discovered. Aveline won many events and gained the approval of the adoring crowd. Eventually, she came face to face with the knight Kaleva in the grand melee. Aveline had already bested him in the joust, and Kaleva was determined not to lose a second time. Out of desperation to regain his honor, Kaleva tripped Aveline and tossed her to the ground, ripping off her helmet as he did so. Silence fell upon the arena as Aveline was revealed. Kaleva declared the previous competitions invalid. A woman had taken part, and this was not allowed. But the crowd cheered for Aveline. Kaleva was furious, for he had lost to a woman and was now being shamed. Blinded by his rage, he forced Aveline to her knees. "Know your place, woman," cried he, and slit her throat. The son of the king, Prince Freyan, was present. He recognized Aveline's skill and bravery and began to see the injustice done to the women in his land. When he was made king, he rewrote the laws of Orlais so that women could also become chevalier. He honored Aveline and knighted her after her death. And to this day, any female who is knighted reveres Aveline the Brave, for she is the patron of all women chevalier. Flemeth's beauty was known throughout the land. She had hair like unto a moonless night, skin as pale as winter's first snow, and eyes as beautiful and perilous as the sea. When she came of age, she came to the attention of the Lord of Highever, Conobar, and he took her for his wife. Conobar soon learned that his young bride had the gift of magic. He kept this a secret, for he feared that she would be taken from him. Flemeth stayed with Conobar for some years, and with his blessing she practiced her art. And then one day, a young poet named Osen came to the castle. Flemeth was captivated by Osen's voice, and he by her beauty, and they fell in love. Flemeth longed to be with her true love, and she and Osen fled from Conobar's lands, seeking refuge in the Kokari wilds with the Chasing tribes. They lived there happily for many a year, till the day Flemeth received news that Conobar was dying and longed to see her face one last time. Flemeth's heart swelled with pity for the man who once was her husband, and begged Osen to return to Conobar's side with her. But when Flemeth and Osen entered Highever, they were captured by Conobar's men, and Osen was slain in front of Flemeth's eyes. Flemeth was imprisoned in the highest tower of the castle, there to await Conobar's judgment on her. Distraught at the loss of her love, Flemeth plotted revenge against her husband. She summoned a fey demon, intending for it to wreak vengeance on Conobar. But a spell went awry. The demon possessed Flemeth. Turning her into an abomination, the halls of the castle ran red with blood as Flemeth slaughtered Conobar and all his men. The last of Flemeth's humanity melted away, and at dawn, she stole back to the wilds to plot and scheme for 100 years. They say she took to her side many chastened men, and with their help begat her daughter witches, who even now prowl the dark places of the Kokari wilds. Which one? I have heard a little about how the elves gained their freedom from the Tevinter Imperium. When Andraste began her exalted march against the Imperium, the elves joined her cause to fight their masters. The great elven leader, Shatan, born in captivity, rose up to lead his people. He foresaw a future where the elves were free. Shatan was killed when Andraste was betrayed, but the elves continued to fight, eventually breaking free of the Imperium. The elves claimed the Dales in the south and settled there in the land of their own. The elves lived in the Dales for centuries. They resurrected the worship of the elven gods and would allow the building of no chantry. This angered the chantry, and the hostility between the two factions finally broke out in open war. The chantry says the elves struck first, but I do not know whether to believe it. The chantry declared a wholly exalted march against the elves, named for Andraste's similar march against Tevinter. During the exalted march of the Dales, the elven cities were sacked, and the elven state completely dissolved. Some of the elves bitterly accepted their fates and surrendered to human rule, living in the human cities as second-class citizens. But others, still fiercely proud of their heritage, refused to bow to the humans, and instead became homeless wanderers. They were the elves of the Dales, the Dalish. Andraste was the Maker's chosen. The Maker had long since abandoned the world when the sound of her singing turned his ear. Beauty, grace, and wisdom enraptured him, and he offered to take her from this flawed world to become his divine bride. But Andraste had an earthly husband and would not forsake him. Instead, she beseeched the Maker to return to his people once more. So earnest was her plea that the Maker was moved, and promised that he would create a paradise on earth if all abandoned their false gods and turned once more to him. And this is why Andraste began her exalted march on the idolaters of the Tevinter Imperium. The Maker granted her his powers with which to smite her enemies. Andraste brought the Imperium to its knees, and her victories converted many to the worship of the Maker. Alas, it was the frailties of men that betrayed and killed Andraste. Her earthly husband, Maferath, a chieftain of the Alamari tribes himself, grew jealous as his wife's popularity and influence overshadowed his own. She was also revered as the Maker's betrothed, and Maferath began to see their own bond waning in significance as Andraste became ever more devoted to the Maker. Out of envy and spite, Maferath made a pact with the Archon Hysarian of Tevinter, allowing his beloved Andraste to be ambushed and captured. Andraste was burned at the stake in Minrathous, the capital of Tevinter. The Tevinter chantry claims that in Andraste's last moments, Hysarian's heart softened, and he heard the voice of the Maker telling him his sword into her heart, and as her blood washed over his hands, he became one of the faithful. Dissenters said that the Archon only converted because he could not stem the tide of Andraste's cult, and was forced to do so to stay in power. We will never know for sure. When Andraste began her exalted march against the Imperium, The elves joined her cause to fight their masters. The great elven leader, Shartan, born in captivity, rose up to lead his people. He foresaw a future where the elves were free. Shartan was killed when Andraste was betrayed, but the elves continued to fight, eventually breaking free of the Imperium. The elves claimed the Dales in the south and settled there in a land of their own. The elves lived in the Dales for centuries. They resurrected the worship of the elven gods and would allow the building of no chantry. This angered the chantry, and the hostility between the two factions finally broke out in open war. The chantry says the elves struck first, but I do not know whether to believe. The exalted march against the elves, named for Andraste's similar march against Tevinter. During the exalted march of the Dales, the elven cities were sacked, and the elven state completely dissolved. Some of the elves bitterly accepted their fates and surrendered to human rule, living in the human cities as second-class citizens. But others, still fiercely proud of their heritage, refused to bow to the humans, and instead became homeless wanderers. They were the elves of the Dales, the Dalish.
Enchantment?
Oh, certainly, I can do that for you. Just come with me. You and your friends are formidable folk, indeed. It's good to have you along on the road. I hear news from Denerim that Tyrn Loghain has been declared the new regent. It makes sense, his daughter being the queen. That's what I've heard on the road, anyhow. Take it for what it is. Something's going on at the Mage's Tower at Lake Cullenhod. Nobody knows exactly what, though, and the Templars aren't saying. Exactly what we need, isn't it? Let's hope the Mages are just cooking up something to deal with the Darkspawn. Somebody should be, after all. That's what I've heard on the road, anyhow. Take it for what it is. Some hunters who range into the Brazilian forest say that a Dalish clan there has fallen to some kind of sickness. The Blight, most likely, poor sods. That's what I've heard on the road, anyhow. Take it for what it is. I hear tell they held a funeral in Denerim for King Caelan. The Grand Cleric called for a full day of mourning, and there was a procession a mile long passing by the brazier. It's too bad they don't have a body to properly burn. What happened to him at the hands of those creatures, it's unthinkable. That's what I've heard on the road, anyhow. Take it for what it is. I heard a strange rumor the other day. King Caelan was not really Merric's son, you see. Merric's real son is hidden in the bowels of Denerim's palace and has been since he was born. I suppose they feed him cakes all day to keep him content. Maybe he's simple. Or a mage. Marik's real son, a mage. Can you imagine? That's what I've heard on the road, anyhow. Take it for what it is. I hear from folks travelling the East Roads that there's werewolves in the Brazilian forest. Actual werewolves. They haven't been around since the days of Dane and his ilk. That's what I've heard on the road, anyhow. Take it for what it is. There's talk that King Caelan was cheating on the Queen and she found out about it. That's why Tyrn Loghain abandoned Caelan at Ostagar. That's what I've heard on the road, anyhow. Take it for what it is. I've heard a rumour that the reason Queen Honora has never produced an heir is that she's barren. It's a curse from the Maker for bringing a commoner into the royal line. Until someone of royal blood is put on the throne, there will never be an heir. It seems the royal line of Calenod has been broken for good now. That's what I've heard on the road, anyhow. Take it for what it is. Of course. Good fortune to you and yours.
Goodbye.
Yes.
Yes.
Indeed.
What now?
Think again. Indeed.
I cannot do that. Yes. I am here.
Ready.
Go! Show yourself to be Andraste's true.
bid you welcome, pilgrim. I am the Guardian, the protector of the Urn of Sacred Ashes. I have waited years for this. It has been my duty, my life, to protect the urn and prepare the way for the faithful who come to revere Andraste. For years beyond counting have I been here, and shall I remain until my task is done and the Imperium has crumbled into the sea. Ah, is it not? Then perhaps this is the beginning of the end. You already know that the urn contains the remains of the prophet Andraste. What else is there to tell? When my brethren and I carried Andraste from Tevinter to this sanctuary, we vowed to forever revere her memory and guard her. I have watched generations of my brethren take up the mantle of their fathers. For centuries they did this, unwavering, joyful in their appointed task. But now they have lost their way. They have forgotten Andraste and their promise. I am all that remains of the first disciples. I swore I would protect the urn as long as I lived, and I have lived a very long time. I made a vow to Andraste and to the Maker. My life is tied to the ashes. As long as they remain, so will I. You have come to honor Andraste, and you shall, if you prove yourself worthy. It is not my place to decide your worthiness. The gauntlet does that. If you are found worthy, you will see the urn and be allowed to take a small pinch of the ashes for yourself. If not... The gauntlet tells the true pilgrims from the false. You will undergo 4 tests of faith, and we shall see how your soul fares. You will understand what it is when you face it. Return. I see you have returned. Do you still seek the ashes? The gauntlet. Oh, before you go, there is something I must ask. I see that the path that led you here was not easy. There is suffering in your past. Your suffering, and the suffering of others. You abandoned your father and mother, leaving them in the hands of Rendon Howe, knowing he would show no mercy. Do you think you failed your parents? Then you do not dwell on past mistakes. Neither yours, nor someone else's.
It's easy for others to judge what you've done in hindsight, but it doesn't make it any better.
One wonders what this Guardian's purpose is. Be wary of his traps.
Parshera, leave the past where it falls.
You are too hard on yourself. No one's perfect.
Is there any religion that does not thrive upon guilt, like a glutton at his lunch? No, I thought not.
And what of those that follow you? Alistair, Knight, and Warden. You wonder if things would have been different if you were with Duncan on the battlefield. You could have shielded him from the killing blow. You wonder, don't you, if you should have died and not him?
Yes. If Duncan had been saved and not me, everything would be better. If I just had the chance, maybe I...
Demand whatever answers you want, Spirit.
You came to this land as an observer, but you killed a family in a blind rage. Have you failed your people by allowing a Qunari to be seen in that light?
I have never denied that I failed.
And you, Morrigan, Flemeth's daughter, what?
Begone, Spirit. I will not play your games.
I will respect your wishes. The way is open. Good luck, and may you find what you seek.
Echoes from a shadow realm, whispers of things yet to come. Thought's strange sister dwells in night, is swept away by dawning light. Of what do I speak? That is not of what I speak.
I'll get on it.
Lark could carry it, while a strong man might not. Of what do I speak? Yes, I was Andraste's dearest friend in childhood, and always we would sing. She celebrated the beauty of life, and all who heard her would be filled with joy. They say the Maker himself was moved by Andraste's song, and then she sang no more of simple things.
An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. The debt of blood must be paid in full. Of what do I speak? Yes, my husband Hissarion would have chosen a quick death for Andraste. I made him swear that she would die publicly with her war leaders, that all would know the Imperium's strength. I am justice. I am vengeance. Blood can only be repaid in blood.
I'd neither a guest nor a trespasser be. In this place I belong, that belongs also to me. Of what do I speak? I'd neither a guest nor a trespasser be. In this place I belong, that belongs also to me. Of what do I speak? That is not of what I speak.
I think that's a corpse.
Can I get you a ladder so you can get off my back? Now's better than later.
The bones of the world stretch towards the sky's embrace. veiled in white, like a bride greeting her groom. Of what do I speak? Yes. I carried Andraste's ashes out of Tevinter into the mountains to the east, where she could gaze ever into her Maker's sky. No more fitting a tomb than this could we find.
A poison of the soul, passion's cruel counterpart. From love she grows, till love lies slain. Of what do I speak? Yes, jealousy drove me to betrayal. I was the greatest general of the Alamari, but beside her I was nothing. Hundreds fell before her on bended knee. They loved her, as did the Maker. I loved her too. But what man can compare with a god?
She wields the broken sword and separates true kings from tyrants. Of what do I speak? Yes, I could not bear the sight of Andraste's suffering, and mercy bade me end her life. I am the penitent sinner, who shows compassion as he hopes compassion will be shown to him.
No man has seen it, but all men know it. Lighter than air, sharper than any sword. Comes from nothing, but will fell the strongest armies. Of what do I speak? Yes, hunger was the weapon used against the wicked men of the Tevinter Imperium. The Maker kindled the sun's flame, scorching the land. Their crops failed, and their armies could not march. Then he opened the heavens and bade the waters flow, and washed away their filth. I am Cather, disciple of Andraste and commander of her armies. I saw these things done, and knew the Makers smiled on us.
My dearest child. You know that I am gone, and all your prayers and wishes will not bring me back. Pup, I know you miss me, but my death and my life no longer have a hold on you. This is how it should be. Set your eyes on the horizon. Do not look back, and do not falter. You have such a long road ahead of you, and you must be prepared. And so I leave this in your hands. I know you will do great things with it.
I see enemies ahead. Atush Konari! Kadan!
Run while you can!
Can I get you a ladder so you can get off my back? All right. Got it. Can I get you a ladder so you can get off my back? Now's better than later. Right then. Let's add some glory!
Uh-oh. I'm terrible at puzzles. Hey, you see those thingies over on the side of that huge chasm? I bet they're used for something. Maybe I should touch them or stand on them?
Alright guys, thanks for watching. Epic's Gaming Channel. We're out. We'll be back soon. Bye.